citizens of the Reject Nation, Greg, and what's your name?
I'm John, I think.
We just saw Black Adam at a special screening at this building right here, the Dolby Laboratories building.
Very
fancy.
fancy.
We got to shoot this quick before Burbank PD finds us. Hey, Burbank.
We're committing a crime right now. The hierarchy, the review sphere.
You got permit to shoot your YouTube video.
Did you clear this with the city? Did you pay?
Black Adam. Now, if you guys haven't seen the trailer, Dwayne Johnson's passion project for DC, and it's like the dark version of Shazam. That's all you pretty much need to know. Been waking after 5,000 years. They said it several times in this movie. 5,000 years. He wants to protect his city, conduct. Black Adam's been awakened, and so Justice Society of America comes in because he's like a nuclear bomb waiting to go off.
That Superman level threat Amanda Waller's always warning about.
Exactly. So the Justice Society sent in there. Okay. Well, where to begin with this film? I would say that, for starters, one of the things that surprised me the most about it was that post-credit scene. Man, if that wasn't ruined for you, boy, would it have been awesome if it wasn't everywhere. Dwayne Johnson himself pretty much wasn't confirming that whatever was put out about that post-credit scene is true.
If it wasn't the thing you've been told to expect.
It was a great post-credit scene. It is awesome. We'll talk about it some other time because it was like, you know what? Even though this was ruined for me, it's pretty sweet. Yeah.
I'm so excited to be here right now, and I still will remember this moment.
In terms of the movie itself, the thing that really surprised me was how they actually really let Black Adam be pretty violent. He is pretty brutal. In the trailer, they do have that one line where he's having a standoff with Hawkman, and Hawkman's like, heroes don't kill. He's like, I do. And in this movie, he kills a lot. There's a lot of death, actually. And
I had that exact thought at one point. Like, a lot of people are dying right away.
He's killing a lot of people in this movie, and it's pretty sweet. And they get pretty creative with bordering on that PG-13 to R rating.
You believe it was cut down from an R, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like those Sony movies, where they're like, he's an anti-hero, but you're like, not really.
You want to be good. This guy doesn't want to be good. Yeah.
He doesn't want to be good, and he's actually, straight up. I mean, granted, he's not killing, like, good people. And a lot of the visual effects are pretty dynamite. Like, there's so much of it that at times it becomes very overwhelming. At the same time, though, there are some very, very impressive visual effects with Black Adam. Like, I actually really enjoyed the way they chose to capture how he flies. That a lot of the way we're just sort of hovering up forward. It's kind of like playing a video game character to a certain extent. And I thought that was great to bring it to life. The Justice Society of America, everything with Hawkman looked awesome. Doctor Fate, he looked great, right,
He looked
Sean?
incredible, yeah, especially the way they realize his various powers and the choices they make visually to separate themselves from not being too much like Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
They actually managed to make it so you're not even thinking about that.
The music choices by Lauren Buffy, which sounds like a werewolf to me. I thought the music was also wonderful. The movie itself was fine. It was a fine movie.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was pretty messy in a lot of ways. And I think like Dwayne Johnson actually does do an all right job. It was something that I was very questionable about. I didn't go, all I see is Black Adam when I watched this movie.
And it didn't necessarily reinvent the Dwayne Johnson wheel in terms of acting, but yeah, I mean, he does sell a much more hard-line, violent character. He doesn't have to rely on his charm in this movie, which is nice.
No, he's not really a character who smiles. Like, there's humor to be had with the character, but some of that is with its fish-out-of-water qualities.
And the deadpan qualities, yeah.
Yeah, he's a very stoic character, which is fitting for this guy. Dwayne Johnson definitely played a character. You know what I mean? Was I aware I was watching Dwayne Johnson for most of it? Yeah, I was aware.
It's a character he should play.
But I appreciated what he was doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I appreciated that he really played a character instead of just relying on Dwayne Johnson charm. This is going to sound like a nitpick, but it's not, all right? I want you to think about this for 1 second. He wakes up after 5,000 years, and he's speaking English in a country where that's not what they're speaking.
No.
And he's speaking English, and he's got an American accent, and no one's bringing this up. no one's questioning why. It immediately pulled me out of the realm of believability on what they're doing because I couldn't move past that. It was
the ancient
very
Shazam
hard.
magic translates. That's a power they don't tell you about.
If that's something they don't tell me, they should have mentioned it.
No, yeah, it is a little bit silly that way.
It's very distracting, and I think the problem with Dwayne Johnson's performance here is while I appreciate what he was going for, I didn't really feel the internal struggle they kept telling me he's having.
No.
He's just kind of stoic. The whole movie is saying, you could be a hero, Black Adam, and he's like, I'm no hero. That's about as far as it goes.
His whole internal struggle is, I have no problem killing people, but I guess I have a few people around me who I would benefit from working from, so I guess I should kill less people. Sort of his whole journey.
You know, while I think that there's some charming performances to be had, like Aldis Hodges is Hawkman here. Aldis Hodges brings a lot to his performance. Like, he's really giving it his all. Pierce Brosnan kind of just slips into this poetic, magician, all-knowing kind of role of Dr. Fate. I think he's perfectly cast.
And then Noah Centineo and Quintessa Swindell are in the movie.
Well, mainly Cyclone is.
Yeah.
I think they gave a decent, charming amount to Noah Centineo. He brought some humor to it. He was funny.
He's more of a character than she is, and yes, he has bits that are identifiable and that are fun to watch come back around.
Yeah, it's like watching Spider-Man. She though is nothing in this film. I don't blame the actress. I really blame the writing of this film. My biggest
I wanted to see more of her, yeah.
Main takeaway I had with the experience by the end of it, because at first it starts off clunky and then it started smoothing out, and I thought, oh, it's one of those movies that probably gets better as it goes. But then it went right back into, no, this is pretty clunky. This is a messy movie. It's very, very messy. And it feels almost outdated with a lot of the types of tropes they decide to play into, especially third act wise, especially with the villain. It feels very perfunctory and the movie.
Especially the villain. For how cool the villain looks, it does feel like, oh yeah, that's right. We have to, I guess, have a villain in this that's not just Black Adam trying to become good.
Even that quality feels underwritten. That's the main takeaway I had, was the scenes that are not action feel very rushed, and there's so much information being thrown my way that it becomes about just keeping up with the most baseline piece of, here's what you need to know about this character.
Here's an info dump.
To kind of give a shit, but you're not really going to give a shit, but you hear, maybe you will, but you probably won't.
Yeah.
You probably won't. And it's so underwritten, and the editing is just all over the place.
Well, that's the thing, is Yomakalle Sarah's style, like when the movie is flowing, I think his style really works because he likes a lot of shots, a lot of editing, a lot of coverage, but when the movie is, it's a movie you could tell has been reworked, and when you're in one of those patches, his style does not help itself out, so then it feels extra messy at those times. Yeah, it's a brick.
It has like some of that cool Zack Snyder slow-mo shit that you love,
and needle drops
galore, which surprisingly worked for me in a movie that I didn't think, if you told me needle drops were in here, those scenes I thought were fun. They were fun needle drops to be had.
I thought it did nicely to emulate Zack Snyder in enough ways to kind of make it cohesive with what has come before in the Snyderverse line of the DCEU, but not so much that it's like, oh, that's all they're trying to do, or oh, that's the only idea they have and there's nothing else brought to the table. But it does feel very much like, no, we want to reinforce this vision.
Because I wanted to walk away just going, you know what, it was schlocky fun, but it doesn't quite feel that way to me. There are times of it where it just felt kind of monotonous.
I think there is like an equal amount of things that are kind of fun and unique, and especially, looking at Dwayne Johnson in a more harsh, heavy role, like that's interesting. But then on the opposite side, you have a bunch of things that feel very requisite. You eventually, not only do you have your villain tacked on, but you also get your requisite, army that we can easily kill because they're vaguely supernatural and there's not going to be any blood or whatever. You get the family element of like, I lost my wife and kid, and now I've got this surrogate wife and kid. I feel like they could have chosen some more unique aspects. I know the thing with his family comes from the origin of the character, but it's kind of mostly what his backstory is for the whole entire thing. You get some lore with the Shazam wizards and all that stuff, but it really feels like there's not a lot of meat on the bone when it comes to the characters. And the most interesting idea the movie has is just about the thin line between good and evil, and the way like the Justice Society looks at everything in those terms, when this is about, a more gray world, and, we need to be in charge of how we see that that justice through. But even that's just like one conversation, and it never comes back, and it doesn't really like imbue the movie with a sense of weight. It's just like, oh, so I guess points for having an idea and putting it in the movie between fights.
The parts where the care seemed to most go into it was the action scenes, because the action's cool. The action's great. It's like really great action. And I feel like that's the point that we're past with superhero movies now, that we at least ought to be, where you care a little bit more past the action scenes.
That's not one of things you have to get right.
Yes. Guys, there's this freaking sky beam at the end of this movie. That's what I mean by outdated. There are things that felt like this was the kind of movie I would watch in the late 90s, early 2000s.
The whole movie feels like the Ares fight with Wonder Woman, kind of. Imagine if you just took that part of Act 3 and stretched it into an entire movie, and that's kind of what this feels like.
I didn't feel like the movie really brought anything new other than a cool new set of powers. Seeing that brought to life was fun, and there is fun to be had. The movie's messier than I expected it to be. I think it falls flat in a lot of areas that I think it thought it was bringing dramatic heft to. In some ways, it's about what I expected. In other ways, it's a little bit of a letdown, and in other things, they did better than I expected them to do.
It's a little of everything.
It's a little bit better here and a little bit worse here than I expected. You know, it's a mixed bag. Yeah, overall, I'm like, whatever. If you're going to watch it, go watch it. I feel like you don't have to see it in the theaters, even though I feel like some of the action scenes are worth more watching in the theaters than watching at home for the first time.
If you're just watching to keep up with the continuity, watch it at home. If you care about any of the characters and if you care about the action, go see it in the theaters, because that's where the best parts of the movie will shine the brightest. But yeah, it's not really such a game changer that you got to rush out and see it, you know?
No, I feel like I've seen this movie already.
I do too. I really do.
This is about by the numbers as you'd expect in every way, and sometimes flatter than I would expect. But that's where we're at. It's fine.
Some good skateboarding.
The kid actors. There's so many laughable moments in there.
A lot of ADR too.
Oh, well, what do you know? Well, you take things too seriously, Greg. Alrighty. Well, subscribe, click that bell. Are you excited for the follow-up film where you know what the follow-up's going to be?
Ooh.
And I'm still excited for it. I feel like it'd be cool.
Shazam.